there might be an identifier. I'm listening to phone calls, conducting our sales searches, trying to find.
If you're new to the channel, hit the like button. Okay. Hey, subscribe to the channel, man. Hey, I want to let y'all know this breaking news, man, because it's sad, man, that they have to go through this, man. But it is what it is, man. And I just want y'all to know that it's justice for takeout and it's justice for do.
Out a C and replacing with a B. Through phone calls, they might replace the C's with B's, or tattoos, it might be a 5-pointed star with the B inside or a flaming B. It just depends on the person.
Is that all? The last winner said he didn't get the Cash App. And you tell me who the last winner was. You let me.
On stage 12 is admitted.
And Investigator Worrell, you've
YFN,
detailed a little
Lucci,
bit that you've done some of the cell site location information work in your current job and your previous job. Can you detail about how often you did this work both at the APD and now?
With APD, it became a daily thing. I was consulted a lot with or by other investigators who had phone records that they needed interpreting and analysis for. I would look at phone records every day. When I moved to the district attorney's office, it's, I would say, weekly that I look at phone records and consult with attorneys and investigators in regards to their evidence pertaining to that subject.
Have you ever given any kind of presentations, writings, anything like that that I haven't covered?
I've given a couple presentations, yes.
Can you detail those?
One was a training for our investigators.
As soon as y'all come in the building, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel.
Briefly on the technology, but as well as investigative techniques you can apply using CSLI and CDRs.
And just CSLI, is that cell site location information?
Correct.
Okay. Keep going. I'm sorry.
Another was a presentation a year or two ago at a gang investigators meeting in regards to investigative techniques and applying phone records and things like that.
And so I think you said currently, do any investigative detectives come to you to ask you about how to do this?
Yes.
And are you able to explain how this cell site location information works?
Yes.
Okay. How often, and I know this is going to be a hard question, about how many cases have you done, would you guess, ballpark, cell site location information for? Ballpark is fine.
Over 100.
Okay. Have you ever testified as an expert witness in a case regarding cell site location information?
I have.
Okay. And how many times have you been qualified?
Hey, y'all can hit a video.
7 or 8.
And what courts were those in?
Here in Fulton County and
Free Thug, man.
Okay. And what specifically were you qualified as an expert in?
Let me know if y'all can hear me in the
call detail
comments.
records with historical cell site
Share this
location
video.
information. So it's kind of a mouthful, but the analysis of historical cell site location information.
And finally, do you have any awards, commendations, or anything else that we haven't mentioned? No. Okay. Can you explain how cell site location information is generated? Yes.
So when we enter into a contract with a network provider, let's say Verizon or AT&T, we're issued our device as well as our unique subscriber information. Now, cell site location information CDRs with cell site location information originated more as billing purposes. The providers needed to keep track of kind of what their clients, their activity was, only to really just maximize their product. They needed to know, if they were getting dropped calls, and as well as how they were going to bill their client. It used to be a time when we would be charged for going over our minutes and more texts and things like that. So that's kind of how these records were initially created. So anytime that we make a phone call, a text, utilize data, it is tracked by the network provider. Has general information of date, time, who we're calling, and as well as which cell site or which tower enabled that cellular transaction, which enabled the connection to the network.
Okay. And so Does this process generate information about locations when you do it correctly?
Yes. So depending on your carrier, they will provide in that particular record, you'll see the transaction, whether it's a voice or text, and then you'll see which tower was responsible for making the connection.
Okay. Now, how do you use this information when it's generated?
So at the request of law enforcement, we can see a particular number of cellular transactions through the call detail records, and we can generate maps based on that information, but also we can see the locations of the towers just through the spreadsheets that are provided with CDRs. From there, based on the relationships, based on neighboring cell sites, we can determine the general area of the device that utilize those towers.
Okay. Now, I know you mentioned a lot of trainings previously. Are there specific trainings that taught you how to do this method so that you can interpret and map out these cell locations?
Yes, the training with the FBI, training with all of the private companies, Hawk Analytics, and prior training, yes.
Are the same methods used in all these different, by all these agencies that train you?
Generally, yes.
So is there sort of a generalized, like specific method?
There's a generalized method, yes. Yes, of evaluating the records, mapping the records, and interpreting those records, yes.
Okay. And are there certain procedures for how to evaluate the data that you obtain?
Generally.
Okay. And can you describe the procedures that you have to use?
So typically when we receive the CDRs from the carrier, we will utilize it. I will go through and evaluate the data that's useful, and then I will utilize a mapping program to map those specific CDRs, and then go back and double check through basically by hand mapping those records to verify that the locations were correct. And then, of course, using neighboring cell sites, you can determine a general area of a device.
Okay. And is this basically the main method that you've learned on how to extract this data?
Yes.
Okay. And has this method of mapping locations based on cell site location information, has this been tested for accuracy?
Yes. Agencies like the FBI will do drive tests to determine radio frequency relationships between cell sites and the devices. Carriers will also generate propagation maps which show radio frequency strength and things like that. So it's generally accepted.
And if I'm understanding correctly, you can't pinpoint an exact location, but you can get a general location. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Right. So based on CSLI, we're going to see the towers that are being utilized by the device, but we're not going to know the specific location of the device. So CDRs with CSLI will not, those GPS coordinates that you might see on them aren't the device, they're the cell site specifically. So we'll have a general area of where the device is based on the utilization of those towers, but we're not going to know, that, it's at the corner of
the main one who could have literally got up at that jam. But I know a lot of people can contest what I'm saying. You feel me?
Has this method that you use, that you've learned how to do these, has this been published anywhere? Is it written down? Is it something that you learn in these trainings? Can you explain whether there's written guidelines or anything like that anywhere?
Yeah, mainly through trainings. That's where I've learned it. I believe the Scientific Working Group on Digital Evidence has also issued some recommendations, but it's generally.
How y'all feel about the whole situation? Y'all think that by them telling on him, like, it's like they did a snake move because they knew what they was doing the whole time, but then all of a sudden they want to come out and, you feel me?
Federal agencies.
They want to come out and say what Thug told them to do instead of what they did. Ain't taking full accountability. Accountability.
Several agencies I've worked with when I was at APD. I don't know of an agency that isn't really aware of phone records and using them.
Fair enough. And
notice there's always a female who telling somebody like, yeah, man, and not just any female, just certain females. You see your girl told dudes, you better think about this, you better think about that. Don't think about them.
probably.
But she wasn't saying
beginning
that when
of
he was bringing in the
type
money
of
from
technology and that type of documentation. As to a specific
That's
time
why
when
it
law
goes to
enforcement
show
started
you
using
can't
them,
trust
I
these females,
couldn't really
boy.
tell you.
So I think
You
said
make
you've
more
been
money than them
working with
females, and
APD.
them
You started
females
working
be
with APD
broke,
in 2008.
and they be
Yes.
telling
Was
you
this
what to
something
do.
that was being utilized the whole time you were working with APD?
When I became an investigator, which was 2015, was really when I started seeing CDRs with CSLI, and I started working cases. It's not widespread. It wasn't widespread throughout Atlanta Police, but certain detectives would utilize them and be able to interpret them, and I would consult with them as well.
So would you say that this method, do you know whether
Or
this method is
New
generally accepted in the field of policing as a reliable investigative tool for determining an individual's whereabouts during a period of time?
Generally,
I'll
yes.
comment down below. I cash app. Just
Were
hit the
you
like
provided
button.
with Javon Fleetwood's cell phone records
Yes.
in an incident in this case?
Yes.
Hit the like button.
And did you use the principles that we just talked about when you evaluated those cell phone records and created mapping?
Yes.
Okay, and based on that, were you able to develop a report that included location information?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, at this point, we would move to qualify Investigator Worrell as an expert in cell site location information and data based on his experience, the many trainings that
Y'all
he's
think
attended and
Thug
taught,
messed up,
and
man?
his
Free
general
Thug,
knowledge
man.
of CSLI
Hey,
and how
free
it works.
Thug, man. Hey, regardless
All
of
right,
what's going on, he gonna make it through this, boy, and get right up out that jam. Watch you get right up out that jam.
Hey, man.
All right, any cross? Anybody?
Hey, man. Cash app giveaway.
Oh, sure. Hey, you want to
All
start?
you gotta
the day
do is
off
hit
that
the
way?
like
Okay,
button. You feel
all right.
me? Once you hit the like button, just comment down below your cash app.
Now, you're able to
Free
get
Thug,
cell site
man.
location information from the phone subscriber
RP Lucci.
company?
Yes.
Okay, so you don't need defendant's actual phone to get that location information.
No. All you need is a phone number.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Excellent. Okay. Ms. Adams?
I've got a few.
Okay, all right.
And then just to be clear, you're seeking to qualify him as an expert in the field of historical cell site analysis, is that correct?
And cell site location information, CSLI.
I'm still using the people from
Another
the
point of
same.
clarity, I noticed that he said earlier in his testimony something about social media.
No,
You're
I'm not
not
even
seeking
gonna
to
use it.
qualify him as an expert in
Everybody
social
retype that
media
cash app.
analysis or interpretation.
No.
Okay,
Cell site location information, historical cell site data.
all right, thank you. Investigator Worrell, good morning, sir. A couple questions for you. If I heard you correctly, I think you said that you get this cell site data information from the subscribing company. Is that correct?
Right. Verizon, AT&T, the major network carriers.
Okay. Once you get that information, I think I heard you say that there's a map that is generated of a particular cell phone location based on the cell towers and the cell site locations and so forth. Did I get that right?
Maps of the cell sites that were utilized.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And so that's my question then, in terms of, do you know what the methodology is that allows for the creation of or the generation of these maps? Is it a computer program or?
And I know a lot of
Yes.
people can sit back and really
So
take
I could
this
map
to
by
initiative,
hand
man.
a
And just you
CDR.
gotta watch certain things
If I
that you
took,
do and
let's just
certain
say,
people you hang
even
around because
2 days worth
they
of
be
data,
on your spot
it would
and their
take-
girlfriend be sitting in the background,
It would probably
broke
take just as many days to
broke
map
it in
out
that thing,
those
and
records,
she be real ass
just
telling
based on how
him,
many there
"Oh, go
typically
ahead,
are in a
finish
CDR.
doing it."
Okay.
Because at the
So a
end of the
mapping program is
day,
there
he
to
the one that
assist,
told you to do it.
in
That's
in
why I
the
tell y'all,
mapping
man,
as
y'all
well as
gotta
kind of
watch what y'all
presentation
doing out
of
here,
which
man.
cell sites are being used.
So it is something, the generation of a map, because that's where we begin. The generation of a map is something that can be done either by hand, a human, yourself, right? Or it could be done with the assistance of a computer program that assists in generating these maps.
Oh, and
Correct.
to the
Right.
old
So
people
that was my
watching this,
question.
I'm sick of
Specifically,
my comments.
if we're talking about a map that is generated by virtue of a computer program, are you familiar with the workings of that computer program, the methodology that computer program uses?
Well, I mean, I'm not a coder, so what it does behind the machine, no. But when it comes to the mapping, I'm always of the opinion that I should be able to do the exact same thing that machine should do. So I understand what it's pulling from the CDR to map the information.
All right. And so whether you are creating or generating that map simply by virtue of the computer, the computer program, or whether you're doing it with the assistance of the computer, or whether you're doing it yourself, are there noted standards and policies and procedures for how you do that? In other words, are there instructions that this is what you look at, then this is what you do, and then this is how you apply the information? Are there standards, written standards that you reference in doing that?
Well, written standards, each carrier presents their information differently. So there may be a carrier that gives a latitude and longitude of the cell site that's used. So there may be a carrier, Sprint is a good example of a carrier that uses a code showing which cell site is being used. So then you have to actually access a different record from that carrier.
Let me know how y'all feel, man. Hey, I want y'all to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, share this video, boy. On anything, boy, because they bogus for what they did to Thug. Hit the like button.
Records.
Okay. And so when you're saying, you're using the word recommendations, which I think, correct me if I'm wrong, right? When you're saying recommendations, you're talking essentially about instructions.
Yes.
Okay. Now, those instructions that would govern the process for evaluating and mapping location, are those recommendations or instructions that are peer reviewed? In other words, are there different agencies that reviews those instructions and says, this is accurate, this is the way that it's supposed to be done, and this is an accurate way of doing it?
Well, it's funny because the carriers also will give instructions on what the meanings are of their records. So in a way, we use the carrier's recommendations and the carrier's instructions to interpret, not really interpret, but to discern the information that they provide.
Who reviews the carrier's information?
All y'all boys gotta do is hit that like button.
Information from the carrier.
Cash.
Okay. And who reviews the accuracy of the information provided by the carrier?
Hit that like button. You feel me? I'm gonna be back.
Whoever requests the information from the carrier.
Okay. That would be you, for example.
Right.
All right. So in terms of, you got the carrier, the information is then generated and sent to you. Right. And you review that information that's been sent to you by the carrier.
Right.
Right. So my question is this: let's jump above the carrier. Before that information is sent to you, is there an agency, an entity that reviews the accuracy of the information generated and sent to you by that carrier?
I'm not sure if this kind of questioning. We're qualifying and analyzing the call records, not in the accuracy of the records themselves. I think if you'd like to count.
Yeah, they more so go to cross for trial, Mr. Adams. I would concur. I'll sustain the objection.
If I may just respond briefly, Judge, I would suggest to the court that in terms of the accuracy of information that is provided and then later becomes part and parcel of any reports that are generated, I think the testing or the accuracy of that information is relevant and would go towards the overall analysis of whether or not it's been sufficiently peer reviewed such that it meets the standards for admissibility of his testimony as an expert.
Your Honor, I think what we're just doing here is qualifying the client of CSLI and whether he is qualified to testify about that. I think this is something that would go more to weight.
Yeah, I would concur. I'm going to still sustain the objection.
All right, yes, sir.
Okay.
I'll move.
All right, go ahead.
All right. You testified a little earlier, Investigator Worrell, about the next step in the process, right, is there being a general location versus a specific location that's determined in the analysis of the data, right? Okay, now, I don't want to get into the weeds because we're not here to kind of cross-examine the intricacies of it, but you know, for example, that the science tells you that a location can be determined, or a cell tower can give you a location based on the signal coming to it from the device, right?
Right, the communication between the tower and the device.
Right. You also know, of course, that sometimes a signal from a device can bounce off of one tower to another tower when the device is being used. You know that.
Like a handoff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Now, so that brings me then to my question about how you're able to determine the general accuracy of a of a location. Right? When you look at the cell site data, you generate a map, and you see either a general location, as you described it, right? You see a general location, whether you're able to determine the accuracy. Is there a mechanism for determining the accuracy of that? In other words, can you determine whether or not it actually bounced off of one tower or another tower? Is there a way to test that?
So in the CDRs themselves, again, depending on the carrier, they will show whether multiple towers were used. AT&T, for example, will show every cell site that one call may have used. So yes, you can see handoffs there. T-Mobile may show a first and a last cell site. So how the call was originated and how the call was terminated. Typically, they're the same. Sprint the same, first cell, last cell. So you can see handoffs better with AT&T, but then you will see, like I said, first and last cells with other carriers.
All right. Do you know, if I use the term error rate, you know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. All right. Do you know, for example, if there is a way to test what the error rate is of any information that might be provided by the provider that details a location or a tower? Or
specific error rates, I would say, depend on the carrier. Sprint, for example, to me was a little bit, had a higher error rate. Percentage wise, I couldn't tell you, but it's all in kind of the evaluation of those records too. You want to see abnormalities when it comes to cell site information. So if I see that there was several towers in downtown Atlanta, and then 30 seconds later, there's a cell site that's used miles away that is physically impossible. That to me shows an error rate with the records, and it can be explained. But as to, I can't give you a percentage of what the error rate would be. Okay. But yes.
Would it be fair to say then, and obviously you don't work for the companies, but would it be fair to say that you can give us a specific error rate for Sprint versus AT&T versus Verizon might have been enveloped by somebody else?
They did that man dirty, man. Like at the end of the day, man, we know for a fact there's a lot of people who sit back like, why Thug ain't get out, but Gunna did? That's because Gunna, he said yes to everything, all the allegations about YSL being a whole, you feel me? You did, you feel me? He said yes to everything that he was supposed to say no to.
Which would make it difficult.
Put it like that. Hit the like button.
In this case, a particular error rate of any records that would be provided by the carrier.
Correct.
Okay. Just a few more questions for you. I think I heard you say that this technology and methodology, that's the word I'm going to keep using, is used by other agencies, right?
Correct.
You reference APD, FBI, and some others. Are you aware of whether those particular agencies have any procedures in place for the testing of the accuracy of the information they receive from the carriers?
Well, when it comes to testing the accuracy of the information from the carrier, are you trying to say whether the information was correct when the carriers gave it to the agencies,
or correct, sir. That's
their interpretation?
That's what I'm asking.
When it comes to whether this voice call was accurate,
y'all new to the channel, I know we got not a lot of new people in here. Hit the like button.
The interpretation of the cell site information, so
share this
determining
video,
a general area, they can perform drive tests and determine
all that
what the strength of a particular tower may be.
Okay. Do you know though whether or not the agencies that you've referenced, for example, APD, FBI, the others that you're familiar with that have quote used this technology, whether they do in fact have procedures in place for the testing of the accuracy of the information received?
I think this is asked and answered. I think you just
asked. That's an answer. I'll stand the objection.
All right. I didn't get the answer. I guess the answer is they have it in place, but you don't know how often they use it or anything. All right. You were asked in regards to the records that you took a look at. We're talking about in a case involving a gentleman by the name of Javon Fleetwood.
Correct.
Do you know what agency, what carrier?
Yeah, it is live, man.
That particular case.
What else is it, man?
Analysis.
This live, man. This the new video, big dog.
I do not recall if it was T-Mobile or Sprint.
All right.
There were several records that we obtained from that case. One was definitely T-Mobile, but again, Mr. Fleetwood's, I don't recall.
All right.
I can refer to my report, I can tell you, but
Do you have your report anywhere in front of you?
I do not.
All right. That's all right. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Mr. Jimenez, go ahead, sir.
Good morning, Good morning, State.
Morning, sir.
Sudi Chalak, Manager, on behalf of Mr. Dorsey. How are you, sir? Good morning.
Good, how are you?
Good. All right, I want to just have a few questions. Now, you say you received this data from the cell phone carriers, is that right?
Correct.
And this data was created, this is kind of like, it's a data dump, it's just metadata they give you everything, is that correct?
I wouldn't say everything, but the date and time of the call, who the call party was, how long the call lasted, again, the cell site, the sector of the cell site. So, yes.
And when you say cell site, the reality is that there are millions of cell towers throughout the United States, is that right?
There are quite a few.
And the phone company doesn't own any particular cell tower, is that right?
Salute to everybody who just woke up, man.
When they contract out for
Subscribe to the channel
property,
if I don't know you.
Maybe I'm not understanding.
But I want you, have a good
One
day,
cell
man.
tower could actually
And watch the
share
video. Sit
and be
down.
used by multiple.
Absolutely.
And then so whoever controls that data then gives it to the cell tower, again, then gives it to the phone companies, is that right?
Well, no, the phone companies they have a retention in place where they also service the antennas that are attached to these cell sites. So, this is just records. I don't know the intricacies when it comes to who gives who the records inside that company. I don't know how to answer that.
But you said during direct that whatever records they do have, they collect them for their own.
Cash App giveaway. I don't care if the video's on pause. Cash App giveaway. Like I said, bro. Feel me? All you gotta do is hit that like button, bro. Once you hit the like button, bro, all you gotta do is comment your cash tag, bro. It's not that hard. Feel me?
Right.
Gotcha.
I would say there are many factors when it comes to why the records were kept by the carriers, one of which was originally billing when like I said, when we would have a limit on minutes or texts or things like that, but as well as they use these to know if their product is also working. So they determine whether there's a dropped call and kind of just the status. This is just in-house records that they keep. This wasn't developed to track or do anything like that.
So it was not developed to track their clients, is that right?
Bro, like 10 of y'all just hit the like button, but y'all didn't comment.
I don't know when it comes to their intentions. I would say that because of the nature of the records themselves, it shows location information. I don't know the conversation that a carrier would have in regards to like why we're keeping these records. I would say when it pertains to law enforcement, they don't retain these records so that they can just give them to law enforcement for law enforcement to track. What they do with their records is their business, but we know that they exist, and so we request them when it's necessary.
So let me pivot a little bit from what you just said right now. Law enforcement gets these records for them because you know they exist. Is that right?
Correct.
And to get them, you actually have to either subpoena or get a warrant.
With cell site location information and search warrant, yes.
Okay. So they don't just freely give it to you. There's actually a process.
Correct.
Now, you received quite a bit of training, is that right?
Yes.
You listed a number of years, thousands of hours that you received in training, specifically as to cell tower location.
I would say my total number of training is close to 2,000. I wouldn't say that's all dedicated towards this type of technology.
And is it fair to say that all the training related to this type of technology has been given to you by either a law enforcement agency, the FBI, or some other company that is in the process of helping law enforcement? Is that right?
A company, they'll help law enforcement. They'll help, I think, anyone that requests their help. I don't know who their clients are, but could be.
All right, now
have you ever gotten training by Verizon?
No.
Have you ever gotten training by Sprint?
No.
Have you ever gotten training by T-Mobile?
No.
So the actual phone companies, the ones that have these records, have never trained you on how to use it.
Correct.
All right. All the programs that you mentioned, these are third-party private companies, is that right?
That's what you
Correct.
find it at.
They are not the phone providers.
Correct.
And what they do is they take this metadata and then they make it pretty into a map. Is that right?
They will, yes, map the data.
So it makes your job easier. You know how to do that.
Correct.
You can look at one location, you can look at a second and a third, and then you triangulate where that actual phone may be.
They banned you from watching.
No, I don't do it in regards to you seeing multiple cell sites that were used by the device. I don't triangulate. I show the cell sites, and then you will see, I will map the neighboring cell sites for that carrier. When I don't triangulate.
Okay. So how
That's getting more specific. That's actually trying to show a specific location.
do you know how to do that?
No,
Okay.
that's not what's done with CDRs.
Okay. Now, you are aware that there are apps or softwares that can emulate another phone number. Is that right?
Correct.
And then you're only going for the phone number. You're not actually looking for the device. Is that right?
For CDRs with CSOI is the phone number.
Yes. So if somebody's emulating.
I'm gonna object to this line of questioning. We're just asking if the science itself is reliable.
Yeah, I mean, this is all cross-examination, Mr. Jimenez.
Yes, you are. And if I may respond, when
It goes to weight. It doesn't go to the criteria of admissibility of the science itself. That's the only thing that, this is a threshold under Daubert I gotta decide, so.
absolutely, it definitely goes to weight, and we will challenge that at trial. However, this is the gatekeeping phase to make sure we're not getting any junk science in here. I mean, it is just because law enforcement has used it for thousands of times doesn't mean that it is good science. As counsel for Mr. Williams was asking, there is error rates